Welcome to C2G Talk, a series of one-on-one interviews with influential practitioners and thought leaders to explore the governance challenges raised by emerging approaches to alter the climate. I'm János Pásztor, I'm the Executive Director of the Carnegie Climate Governance Initiative, and I'm speaking today with Olga Algayerova, the Executive Secretary of the UN Economic Commission for Europe. She took office on the 1st of June 2017. Ms. Algayerova previously served as permanent representative of Slovakia to the international organizations in Vienna, Austria, and was State Secretary in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs from 2006 to 2010. She also served as President of the Slovak Millennium Development Goals from 2010 to 2012. Olga Algayerova, welcome to the C2G Talk. It's my pleasure to see you and pleasure to see you again.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, János. Thank you for inviting me to this interview. It's my pleasure.
You're welcome. So let's start with the big picture. The world is facing a multitude of urgent issues from climate change, pollution, biodiversity collapse, COVID pandemic, migration, economic development issues, and peace. Today, we would like to single out the climate crisis, which is big enough by itself. So what is the UNECE doing to promote regional cooperation and support member states to achieve the Paris Agreement?
You are very right. The world, namely our region, is facing multiple challenges. And we don't need to speak about the COVID crisis, but we have many more. So if we have to tell what UNECE is doing to promote regional cooperation, we started from the very first moment of our existence, and our mission statement is telling connecting countries, driving progress and improving lives. So if we have to speak about what is it we do in promoting the Paris Agreement achievements of our member states, of course, first of all, we are supporting our member states in implementing the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, where we can see a Paris Agreement as a substantive part of it. And how we do that, it is through concrete and impact and results-oriented activities. And we have for that 8 sub-programs on environment, transport, statistics, economic cooperation, integration, sustainable energy, trade, timber, forestry, housing, land management, and population. So this multi-sectoral structure is allowing us to support SDGs implementation and also to achieve Paris Agreement targets in an integrated manner. So, and this is why we introduced, I believe in 2018, we call it Nexuses, what speaks about our cross-sectoral activities. And we stipulated for us important 4 Nexus areas. And of course, each of them is covering multiple SDGs. So first, that we probably will speak today about is sustainable use of natural resources. Second, sustainable and smart cities, because we believe the local governments are very much responsible for delivering both Agenda 2030 and Paris Agreement. Third one is sustainable mobility and smart connectivity. And last but not least is measuring and monitoring progress towards the achievements, the SDGs, and also Paris Agreement. So we produced 4 publications for each Nexus 1, and we will be happy to launch them during our commission session. And I invite you warmly to read them, to pay attention to them, and also to take part in our commission session that will be 20th and 21st of April. So we call, besides others, goals for ambitious and immediate climate action. We encourage countries to accelerate the transition to also carbon neutrality by setting clear decarbonization goals, promoting the use of renewable energy and increasing energy efficiency and low carbon alternatives across the whole energy system.
Thank you. This is very interesting. There's a lot here, but maybe on this last part, if you could tell us a little bit more about the carbon neutrality concept, the way it is practiced in the UNECE region. How would you describe the level of response by the different countries in the region?
If we speak about the response by individual countries in the UNECE region to the carbon neutrality concept, we need to consider that our region is very diverse and complex and encompasses countries that are high and low income, economies in transition, that are energy rich and energy poor. So also the response to that concept is very complex and diverse. Speaking about the carbon neutrality and defining our region, we are the region that produces and consumes 40% of primary energy and produces 40% of global economic output. And also 80% of primary energy in the UNECE region is fossil, and the region accounts for half of global GHG emissions, what everybody wonders. But if you consider the membership of our countries, there are 56 coming from the EU, the eastern part of European region, it means the Balkans, of course, the Russia, the Caucasus, Central Asia, and the United States, Canada, plus Turkey, Israel. So you see
a broad range of countries.
Yes. So even if the region succeeds in contributing to efforts to limit global warming by 2 degrees of Celsius by 2050, fossil fuel still will represent a part of the region's energy mix in 2050. So now the question is, what is the part? If we today have 80% of primary energy from fossil, so what will be the part? So we are ambitious and we want to have it at least 50%. The region remains dominant in the global financial system and is also the home to important energy industries. So back to the question, many countries and regions are embracing carbon neutrality as a concept to attain climate commitments, effectively recognizing that the nationally determined contributions in the Paris Agreement are today outdated for the purpose of mitigating climate change. So this year, by COP26, attaining carbon neutrality is recognized as a first milestone towards sustainable energy. And this concept was pioneered by many countries in the UNECE region. The leaders or the best examples are countries like Canada, Denmark, France, United Kingdom, who pledged carbon neutrality and revised their national action plans to get the net zero by 2050. And we need to tell also that it was consensually embraced by the European Union and presented in their European Green Deal in December 2019.
Mm-hmm. This is, of course, very encouraging, and it's good to see all these countries going for net zero. Do you see any directions, any indications whether the totality of the region might go for commitments for net zero? And what is it that you could, as UNECE, do to help those countries who have not yet done so?
Well, let's wait till Glasgow, how they will approach that. And what we are doing many things, you know. Achieving that carbon neutrality will require an all technology strategy involving accelerated deployment of energy efficiency, renewable energy, carbon capture, use and storage, high efficiency, low emissions technology, low carbon gases, nuclear power, and CO2 removal, storage, or other approaches such as increasing forest absorptive capacity. So what we need to do in our region, we need both to reduce our dependence on traditional fossil fuels and to invest in all low and zero carbon technologies that are available today and in future, and innovate, you know, energy efficiency, renewable energy, carbon capture, storage, nuclear energy, hydrogen. So we also must cut or capture at least 90 gigatons of CO2 by 2050 to meet 2 degrees of Celsius. And of course, as Angela Merkel told, we have 5 minutes after midnight, so immediate action is needed.
And you know, I agree. This is such a big challenge. But do you see the governments of the UNECE region really taking this up seriously enough with the urgency that this requires? And of course, doing it not just to get that carbon, but also doing it in the sustainable development context to make sure that we meet all the sustainable development objectives.
Look, as I mentioned, the countries are diverse and their progress towards the goal are also different. So this is why in UNECE, we are doing our best in order to raise awareness amongst countries. And that awareness is certainly raising up, but it seems that countries must be more serious and more committed. As mentioned, this year is the pivotal year for countries to demonstrate that they are really serious about fighting climate change and ready to make bold commitments. Another example, 2 examples maybe, what we do is now 20th and 21st of April, we'll have our 69th Commission session that we have only each second year. The topic of our Commission session is circular economy and sustainable use of natural resources. We are inviting and we were working last 2 years, inviting the member states to one table and to make their commitments towards higher circularity. So I hope we get some good example during our Commission session, some good achievements, some good regional commitment towards increased circularity, where many tools that we have available from those multiple sectors like transport, forest, construction industry, food systems, energy, we trade, that contributes so much to the carbon neutrality or can contribute. We will see the commitments of our member states and we want to make our regional pledge. So then in September, the UN at the global level is organizing high-level dialogue on energy. It is in preparation for COP26 in November in Glasgow. And we call for countries to recommit to the future. We are really running out of time and urgent action is needed. With immediate action, we can still meet our objectives. We hope so. And each country can contribute in its unique way based, of course, on the specific own endowment of natural resources, its own cultural, regulatory, legislative heritage. Each country can take its own pathway to attain carbon neutrality.
Okay, well, thank you. This is very helpful. Now, the UNECE, of course, has a framework for attaining carbon neutrality by 2050. And the framework proposes a range of technology and policy options. You already alluded to the totality of the technology options that we need, but maybe if you could give us a brief overview of what these options are, the priorities, the options, and what emerging approaches that have been considered.
So, speaking about the UNECE's framework for attaining carbon neutrality by 2050, and what are the options for technologies and policies to be used. So on the framework, this was developed by the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe, our task force on carbon neutrality, as part of implementation of the project that is named Enhancing the Understanding of the Implications and Opportunities of Moving to Carbon Neutrality in the EC region across the power and energy intensive industries by 2050, or in short, Carbon Neutrality Project. This document develops the carbon neutrality framework for the EC region with a focus on the power sector and energy intensive industries by defining carbon neutrality, the elements and scope of carbon neutrality framework, and targets for the EC region and its sub-regions. So again, as we discussed, the holistic energy system approach and all technology strategy is important here. So what those technology and policy options might include, there are multiple categories like improving end-use energy efficiency cost effectively, reducing losses in transformation, transmission and distribution, reduce methane emissions, improve power generations efficiencies, improve total system efficiency, reducing CO2 emissions where we have carbon capture and storage, shifting to low or no carbon primary energy sources, deploying smart technology to decarbonize systematically, removing CO2 directly from the atmosphere, and managing carbon sinks, notably forests and oceans. And in each of these categories, there will be plenty of technologies and policies options. So we need solutions that deliver quality of life broadly. This means not only delivering on climate objectives, but also addressing the daily challenges of individuals who are the agents of change and who have their own priorities. Governments and politicians must be empowered to act. We should expect that governments are acting to improve our quality of life. We should expect that governments will act rationally and holistically in terms of economics, environment, and society.
Well, there's a lot to do here. So, but maybe if you could just say a few words of how do you see the role of the private sector in all this? Because you've mentioned a lot about what governments need to do, but what about the private sector? How can they help to achieve the net zero target in the region? And in particular, in terms of upscaling carbon dioxide removal or negative emissions approaches, what are the key challenges? And how does the Economic Commission for Europe engage the private sector and others to actually address those challenges?
Definitely, my message is without private sector, this achievement wouldn't be possible at all. You know, of course, private sector will play a very important role in a race to net zero. If we are not able to mobilize private sector, we will simply not succeed. And also the private sector, it's, you know, I strongly believe I was working more than 15 years in private sector, and you know, it is possible to achieve the profit bottom lines and work for sustainability, for also the net zero emissions. And today, namely in this crisis, the public finances become increasingly constrained, and there is a clear need to find resources from elsewhere to support, to move to a low carbon resilient. So it means private sector is central to the solution. What do we do at UNECE? We work with our stakeholders. I believe we can improve our cooperation with the private sector. And we promote international national policies that encourage private actors and new business models. For instance, very important part of our work that I'm particularly proud of is our work on public-private partnerships, under which scope we help countries to develop necessary tools to identify, negotiate, manage, and implement successful public-private partnerships projects. But we can do much more also here. Just if we speak about private sector, our transport division, so there is the whole car industry that we need to bring to our table. Already mentioned construction industry, the whole trade, you know. So it's everything. We need to do more on that.
You mentioned quite a few times the issue of carbon capture and use and storage, and also carbon removal. And these are important elements of the action that one has to undertake. But many people are concerned about the issue of what is referred to as the moral hazard. The idea that investing in these approaches like CCUS or CDR, they could reduce the pressure on society to actually become less carbon intensive. Is this a valid view from your point of view? What do you think about this? And what can we do about it?
Look, on all important issues, we will always hear the voices for and against, okay? So, but as we discussed, You were mentioning the moral hazard in investing in carbon capture, storage, utilization, or removal. The main message here is that we are really running out of time, and facing a species existential threat that we need to address together urgently. We definitely need to be more ambitious and work harder towards full decarbonization of our society. But as I mentioned, that today roughly 80% of the energy mix in our region is fossil fuel based. So then carbon capture, utilization and storage, carbon dioxide removal are very important and crucial part of available options to meet our objectives. These technologies allow countries to establish a pathway to carbon neutrality and stay with their emissions targets.
So what do you see as the biggest challenges, given what you just said?
Well, there are some, definitely, as in everything in our lives. So first, the data show us that fossil fuels will remain part of energy mix in many countries, not only in UNECE region, in a foreseeable future, even under most ambitious climate mitigation scenario. Because there are some sectors cannot be easily decarbonized, such as energy intensive industries. Let me give you some examples: production of cement, steel, iron, chemicals or glass, or long haul transport. So while we need to continue investing into research and development to develop new technologies that could allow us to fully decarbonize our economies, until then we need to deploy and commercialize technologies that exist today and can help to get to our destination. We have to use, however, the whole mosaic of innovative technologies, carbon storage and removal being critical components, but they are just one part of that. And we need to use a whole mosaic of all viable climate policy options. And here, political commitment and ambition, public pressure is needed here. All stakeholders being joined in achieving this goal. It is all required for long-term engagement and societal commitment, recognizing the scale and cost of the industry that needs to develop quickly to rescue our planet and species.
Okay, so what policies do you see that need to be put in place in the region to reduce this hazard? What is your commission, the ECE, doing to assist countries in this regard?
We hope we do a lot during last 73 years of our existence. So first of all, we are taking action to support countries in implementing our standards, norms, policy guidelines. We make many assessments, environmental assessments on the country level. Now we started to do it on the cities level. So in implementing these new technologies and attaining carbon neutrality. And our action is focused on three core aims. First of all, raising awareness, recognizing all available technologies, besides them also the carbon capture and storage, as an essential climate mitigation option and consider it when developing national plans. So then developing and integrating policies to allow full use of those technologies for all energy and all intensive industries. We are, first of all, we are convening platform. So we have about 10,000 experts in different fields from our 56 member states. They are working together to produce those standards and norms, and we work on consensual basis. This is our asset. So to create more of such standards and norms that lead to that goal. And then we support our member states in creating funding mechanisms, not only for carbon capture and but to all new technologies that are leading us to that goal, and directing investments towards modernization of energy infrastructure. So we produce many studies. Just recently, we published a study on geologic CO2 storage in Eastern Europe, Caucasus and Central Asia. Countries of Eastern Europe, the Caucasus and Central Asia host significant potential for CO2 storage, and that report provides for the first time a rather detailed analysis in terms of both cost of geography of CO2 storage potential in eastern part of UNECE region. So I believe our region will play a leading role in deploying many innovative technologies in decarbonization and also in carbon capture, utilization and storage technologies. And we always stand ready to support our member states with technical support and also support our sister regional commissions in working on this topic together.
Thank you. So let's now turn to another topic, another issue. The UNECE framework specifically excludes solar radiation geoengineering, or solar radiation modification as called by the IPCC. This refers to additional ideas to lower temperatures by reflecting sunlight back into space in order to cool the planet directly. These techniques include ideas to brighten marine clouds, increase ground reflectivity, or to spray reflective aerosols into the stratosphere. While these proposed approaches are mostly theoretical now, there is active and growing interest in their research. Governments asked the IPCC to cover these approaches specifically in the forthcoming sixth assessment report. And on the 25th of March, just 2 weeks ago, the US National Academy of Sciences, Engineering and Medicine published a new report suggesting that the US should pursue a research program for solar geoengineering alongside a portfolio of climate mitigation and adaptation policies. What do you think about these approaches and doing research on these approaches?
Solar radiation geoengineering, we discussed that some time ago, and I know you are work very hard on that, and this is definitely an interesting technology and can be appealing to many countries in the future. Geoengineering can affect global warming, and we need to direct more investment into R&D of any innovative solutions that can be game changers. At the UNECE, as already mentioned, we provide platform for technology neutral dialogue, and we are excited to partner with Carnegie Climate Governance Initiative to help our countries to get better informed about new emerging technologies that can play an important role in fighting climate change in the future. From my side, if you ask me what I think on that, first of all, we don't have, today we don't have mandate to elaborate on that from our member states so we need to get our mandate from our member states. Second, if such technology or any new technology should be used, we need to learn more about that, about pros and cons of using any innovative technology. And then we need to make sure that the access and the benefit of using that is equal for all UN member states. Mm-hmm. So, however, again, we are very happy to work with you, to lead the dialogue with our member states, to partner with your initiative, and to help our countries to get better informed about any new emerging technologies.
Thank you, and we look forward to working with UNECE on such dialogues. And we are also a technology neutral initiative, so I think we can meet and talk and continue this dialogue. But let's come back to the events happening this year. Of course, we have a COP26 meeting in Glasgow, hopefully at the end of the year. And there will be a UN Energy high-level dialogue in September in preparation for this COP26. Which key messages will you take to the meeting about UNECE's work in this area?
So, first of all, I and all my colleagues, we have very high expectations from the high-level dialogue in preparation for COP26 that we will have in September. I truly hope that this will be fulfilled, those expectations. It's absolutely urgent to act now and make bold commitments. So we are reaching a tipping point. I would like at this moment, and thank you for this opportunity, to highlight the following. First of all, we are running out of time, and structural change will be much deeper than most people expect, and it needs to start now. Second, the greater the delay, the greater the investments needed, and the greater the change required. Third, sharing good and best practices is needed. Inclusive multi-stakeholder initiatives can be strengthened by public-private partnerships. Next, the industry has to commit to wide-ranging greening, and the private sector should lead the structural change through design, material efficiency, sustainable energy technology interplay, and it requires all government support. We need to scale up favorable conditions and develop legal, financial, tax, regulatory frameworks together with infrastructure and banking institutions. And as I started, we need to act now as all new technologies, including carbon capture, utilization, and storage, unlocks full decarbonization of energy sector. Countries need to include those new technologies in long-term strategies and start retrofitting existing infrastructures. If you allow me, just in conclusion, I would like to highlight that carbon capture and storage is not a magic solution that will get us to destination in isolation. All zero and low carbon technologies, such as renewable energy, energy efficiency, hydrogen, nuclear energy, need to be taken into consideration and will play its role. And this is what we do at UNECE. We provide a platform for technology agnostic dialogue on technology interplay, and we are looking forward to continuing cooperation with countries and wider stakeholder community, with private sector, NGOs, academia, in identifying the most effective solutions for our region, for people living in our region.
Thank you very much, Olga. But I really have to ask you one last question, because between the climate emergency, the pandemic crisis, all the challenges you just described in the EC region, but of course in the world as a whole, your colleagues and the EC as a whole must feel really overwhelmed, because there's a lot to do here. So I guess the question I'd like to ask you, how do you keep motivating your colleagues and yourself in such a challenging situation?
Look, each crisis, since March next year, we had this COVID crisis, develops in me not only motivation, but also the urgency of response. I really was online with all our member states, with our UN country teams. As you know, we have now a new resident coordinators with the governments, and listening to them, what's going on, what's happening, just to understand the size of this crisis that was coming. And then I believe all my colleagues in UNECE are very enthusiastic. They are really professionals in what they are doing, and they were very helpful. And we came literally in the very first days of the crisis with the right responses and the toolkit that was provided to the governments, to our country teams. And it needs a lot of action, but it's a beautiful work if you feel that it can help to improve the lives of people, you know. And so we are in our energy team, so we are in all our teams, and it makes me confident that we can, together we can make a difference.
Well, thank you very much for this positive ending, and thank you for your contribution. Thank you, Olga Algayerova, for participating in this episode of C2G Talk.
Thank you again for inviting me. It was my pleasure, Janos, and hope to see you soon.
Yes, same on my side. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.